Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky got some injury updates on Austin Reaves and LeBron James. Some surprising numbers for Lakers fans in terms of early trends for the offense and the defense. And Andy, what the hell happened to Kent Bazemore? We'll talk about all of that next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. It's up early for you, whether you work the night shift, the early morning shift on the East Coast. Doesn't matter. This thing is ready and waiting for you every day, Monday through Friday.
If you don't work at all, man, you can listen to it. Like we have no
but then it's
standards.
It's more flexible. But maybe
Sure.
you're a night owl. Sure.
No, I mean, just if you're getting up to do absolutely nothing starting at 6 a.m, basically what we're saying is listen to us.
Yes.
Like there's no judgment as long as you're listening to us. If you're not listening to us, that's where the judgment begins.
We shiftless layabouts
Yeah.
who download our podcast
Oh,
are
yeah.
welcome here.
No, the clicks of the unemployed count just the same as the
That's exactly
like
right.
it does not matter if you are borderline destitute or like Elon Musk. Your click is exactly the same. Like that, we are doing our part, our very small part to decrease the wealth gap.
That's right. Want to let you know
Through this
as well.
podcast.
Want to let you know that this episode of Locked On Lakers is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. Big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. So we got a bunch of things we want to get into. An interesting question we'll try to get to before the end of the show that somebody sent in about Carmelo Anthony and kind of the reception he's been getting, not just at Staples Center, which is amazing, but around the league this year. We'll try to get to that. We've got some fascinating numbers about the Lakers offense from our friend Cranjus McBasketball, Tim_NBA on Twitter, that we'll definitely talk about. But first, Andy, we'll do a little injury news here. Brian Windhorst, we had mentioned that there was at least some possibility, some supposition that LeBron James's injury could keep him out longer than sort of the 2 weeks ish that the Lakers, evaluate him after a week, at least a week, whatever that the Lakers put out there. Brian Windhorst at ESPN has reported and indicated that the Lakers really don't believe this is a serious long-term injury, and that it won't be, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. That is comforting.
Yeah, on ESPN during a show Wednesday, this just in, he said, quote, "This is not a severe injury. He is rehabbing it. And from what I am told, the rehab is going well. He may just have to do some reconditioning a little bit, but this is not going to keep him out an extended period." Obviously with injuries, you never know exactly what's going to happen until it does.
Right. And when we talk about reconditioning, it's not like he's turned into like Thor.
No.
In like Endgame or something where he's got like 45 pounds to
lose. Nothing made that more obvious than during LeBron's first season with the Lakers when he had that groin strain or groin pull, the thing that kept him out for, I think it was like 6 weeks or something like that. And there was a period where LeBron, we were told, was really not able to do much of anything. And then the first practice that we were inside, we were allowed as media, when LeBron started practice again, he was, as he often does, practicing shirtless. And we saw LeBron's version of dad bod.
Mm-hmm.
And it was gross in the sense that it was ripped and perfect.
Yeah, I just, these guys are, again,
it's
always
so demoralizing to the rest of us.
I like to remind just whenever I can that these people are a different species than the rest of us. I remember Corey Brewer, who is the skinniest human being I have ever met, was talking about how when he came over, I think it was when he came over from Houston.
Yeah.
He was with the Lakers for like a half season, then re-signed for the next year. And he said that part of what was keeping him down was he was out of shape and his body fat was way up. It was like, I think it was up to like, I'm not even making this. It was up to like 7 or 8, but he's usually down at like 2.
Corey Brewer had inverse body fat.
Right.
It was unbelievable. He also had a pet goat.
But anyway, so LeBron's really getting himself back into shape relatively quickly. The Lakers did announce on Thursday that Austin Reaves, who missed Wednesday's game because of a hamstring injury that Frank Vogel said was not serious. Frank Vogel is a damn dirty liar, as it turns out. It is serious. He's going to miss at least a couple weeks. Before we get to Kent Bazemore here, what was my big bold prediction? The day the regular season began, we each made bold predictions for the 2021-22 Lakers season. Do you remember what mine was?
No.
Mine was that the guys under 32 or whatever, under 30, like the young guys on the team, would miss more games than the old people.
You did say that, actually.
I did say that. And thus far, I mean, granted, the LeBron injury does throw it in, and, Trevor Ariza being out for indefinitely adds games to that too. But at least in terms of per capita, like volume, like everybody except Malik Monk, who is under 30, has been hurt on this roster.
I think hasn't even. Yeah, pretty much everybody.
And so that was my big bold prediction. And through 12 games, I am spot on perfect. I'm a goddamn genius. Let's talk about Kent Bazemore. WTF? That is my question to you.
It's been rough lately. Kent Bazemore, it was funny actually, in the game against Miami, which very unusual for Kent Bazemore. He did not play in the fourth quarter. He did not play in overtime. He made one shot during that game, and it was basically luck. He hit this high arching fall away shot to beat the clock, like in the middle of the lane. It was the first and only basket he made. And it just sort of was emblematic of how he has no control over his shot right now. And he really just has not been playing well, period. Like in a game that was filled for the Lakers with terrible turnovers, he had the absolute worst. In the first quarter, he threw this just horrendous alley-oop pass to DeAndre Jordan that Jimmy Butler just enveloped without much effort. It was that bad. And just, again, nothing is going well for Kent Bazemore at the moment. His November splits, 5 games, averaging 3 points per game on 23% shooting, rounding up from the field, 10% from behind the arc.
Yeah, that 10% figure. It's interesting when you start to look at these guys. He has obviously played very poorly. We have laid out the amount of guys who are not in the rotation right now. LeBron James, Talen Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, now Austin Reaves. Wayne Ellington has been in and out.
Rajon Rondo has
been in and out. These are all players that in one way or another can, the absence of Trevor Ariza impacts the availability or the amount of playing time that's available for Bazemore. Dwight Howard being out for a couple games has an impact because Bazemore is one of the few guys that can kind of play that swing wing position. I used to do that in the 60s. I played the swinging wing, the swing and wing. It's very Austin Powers.
Keep it moving.
Anyway. Yeah, baby. So his playing time nonetheless is kind of getting chipped away at. And that is as much of an indictment as anything. You're talking about a guy who, played 31, 23, 28, 31, 28, 28, 27 in October, 27, 22, 19, 14, and then 22 on Wednesday on, again, a game where the Lakers had 9 guys available. One of them was Dwight, who fouled out in 11 minutes, and I think Sekou Demboya was there.
And it went into overtime.
Right. So, let's do this after the break, because what it says to me is not just something about Bazemore. It says it really illustrates the challenge that Frank Vogel has in front of him, trying to figure out how to juggle the rotation, particularly now, given all the people that are hurt. So we'll talk about that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends, family, they come together, they reconnect. It's a place you always look forward to stopping at on a long road trip to rest your legs, to refuel. I told people several months ago when I ended up going on that camping trip because, frankly, I had no other choice. On the ride back, stopped at a McDonald's. It was fantastic.
crushed one of them quarter pounders.
It was unreal. Little league games, soccer games growing up, our grandma used to always take us afterwards. It was just fantastic. So head to your local McDonald's, refuel, reconnected. Somebody say Locked On Lakers watch party. Ba-da-da-ba-ba.
Hey, Locked On Lakers also brought to you by betonline.ag. It's back. It's better than ever. And what they're talking about is basketball season and the new web interface that they've got for the start of the season now. About almost a tenth of the way through, Andy, already. We're zooming through this bad boy. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head on over to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% off welcome bonus as you're on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive that bonus. Basketball, football, baseball, well, not baseball. NHL, they really should update this copy. From basketball, football, the NHL, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers that are available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the games start. So we'll get to some of these numbers about the Lakers offense and defense through their first now 12 games, correct, Andy?
Yes.
12 in a second here. But let's finish up this conversation about Kent Bazemore because he has played very poorly over the last 4 or 5 games. And the biggest difference is that floor spreading ability. There's a massive difference between Bazemore shooting 43%, 42% from three, which is what he did in October, versus, say, 10, which is what he's doing in November. Very big. And we always said at the beginning of the year, if Bazemore can spread the floor, he's going to play a lot because he has a good defensive profile and is very versatile. If he doesn't, though, kind of all bets are off. It's very similar. It's sort of the inverse of Malik Monk, where like Monk, you believe in the offense, but you worry about the defense. Like if Monk scores like he did on Wednesday, he's going to play. If his defense is passable, to me, this just illustrates the challenge that Vogel has trying to piece together rotations, consistent rotations out of players that are not going to behave consistently.
Yeah, it's interesting that you frame it that way, Brian, just because I think there's been so much just chaos surrounding, this team with all the injuries and that, extreme lack of continuity that's, began during training camp, but has really become problematic over the last several weeks. It's kind of allowed Bazemore's slump, I think, to go pretty unnoticed because just there's so much other stuff that feels more immediate. But
and he's not expected because he's not expected to score 17 points a game. You don't necessarily notice as much.
No, but at the same time, though, we talked a lot heading into this season that he was, in our estimation, the 4th most important player on this team, even if he wasn't the 4th best. But, that lack of continuity and, LeBron's availability, sometimes Anthony Davis not being available in certain games, like the limitations of a guy who's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, they really start to show a little bit more. And I think LeBron's absence in particular hurts a guy like Kent Bazemore, who's much more of a reactive player than somebody that you would look to do things that everybody else would react off. And LeBron is the ultimate guy that you react off as a player. LeBron orchestrates everything while he's on the court and everybody reacts in turn. Not having LeBron there, I think in particular, has been a bad thing for Bazemore. I don't think it's a coincidence that this slump has grown really, really extreme over this period where they haven't had him.
And I think too, the more you lose sort of that structure around him, the more there is that like he starts to do. Like, you're out of players you might need him to. You end up with more possessions where the ball ends up with Bazemore in a spot where you would prefer it not be. And I made the comparison and I will continue to. I think the Lakers signed Bazemore and hope to deploy him. And by the way, Bazemore's not taking a lot of shots, only taking 3 or 4 shots a game over, averaging actually slightly under 4 over the last 4 games for the Lakers. He's also not playing as much. And even in October when he was playing more, he has not taken more than 9 shots in any game as a Laker. He reminds me of what I think they hope to do with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which is accentuate all the stuff that he's good at, minimize the stuff that he's bad at. In the case of Bazemore, it's decision making with the ball. It's shot selection and he'll do one or two weird things a game. I think that's how it was explained to us by Andy Liu and Sam Esfandiari, who watched him last year, and all that stuff. The more guys like LeBron are out, the less you can do that. The less you can put Bazemore in that lane where you emphasize his best stuff, de-emphasize the worst. And I just think, his defense has been okay. It's been fine, but it is a drag on the offense when he is this bad and when he can't space the floor. The Lakers have to find consistent floor spacing. They just have to. And if that's not Bazemore, it's going to have to be Malik Monk, and it goes back to this offense defense trade-off that Vogel's constantly playing with. It's very difficult. I'm not sure fans really understand just how hard this rotation is to work with the role players plus dropping the nuclear bomb that is Russell Westbrook into it.
Well, based on what I see on Lakers Twitter, I'm very comfortable saying they don't understand. Or if they do understand, they don't give a shit.
Or maybe maybe I'm being too generous.
Well, it could be
sympathetic to Frank, or both. I mean, two things can be true at once.
Well, it could be that classic line from Homer Simpson: "Just because I don't care doesn't mean I don't understand." And it may be a case of Laker fans saying, "Yeah, I get that this is hard." Frank Vogel also is compensated very handsomely,
right,
in order to make this stuff work.
Figure this out, right?
And I live and die by the Lakers. Figure this shit out, Frank.
It's similar it's similar to the Caruso thing, where it's like, okay, I get it. An extra $30 million, a lot of money. I don't care. It's not my money. It's your money, and I want you to spend it so my team's going to be better. By the way, Alex Caruso will be the topic of conversation for Monday's show as the Lakers take on the Bulls. There's been some news.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but the part of the reason I think I bring this up is because our friend Cranchis McBasketball, Tim_NBA on Twitter, has some really interesting numbers that he put out on Thursday about the way the offense operates and why the Lakers need floor spreaders. And this gets to anyway, it'll be interesting to see how much Bazemore plays going forward and what they do with this. But floor spacing.
When you've got half a roster, he's going to keep playing.
He's going to keep playing. But then what happens?
He's the only guy on this. He's one of the only guys on this team who you can sort of talk yourself into as a small forward.
Right. I mean, look, he's going to get. It's hard to play Bazemore less than 20 minutes a night.
Yeah,
with Reaves out.
Shit, it's hard to play anybody on this team right now less than 20 minutes a night.
But it was just when I keep talking about this like it's a given. When everybody's back, what happens? Yeah, I don't know. Is Bazemore become a guy who was squeezed? If he keeps shooting 10%, the answer is going to be yes.
Look, it's like a lot of things with this team right now. It's very hard to know until you start dealing with the full deck.
So this from Cranchis Basketball, Tim_NBA, 51% of Russell Westbrook shot come at the rim when both Dwight and DeAndre are sitting on the bench. That number drops to 34% when DeAndre's on the court in 151 minutes. It drops to 25% when Dwight's on the court in 99 minutes. AD's rim frequency with Russell Westbrook on the court, and as a center, he's taking 50% of his shots at the rim. With Dwight, DJ on the floor, 34%. With Dwight, that drops down to 33%. We've talked a lot about the starting lineup here, Andy, and floor spacing with Bazemore in this case and why it's so critical. It also obviously matters who is playing and where. But the conversation needs to expand past what's good for AD and really look too at what's good at Russell Westbrook, because the offense is suffering in ways that I'm not totally sure people have noticed because there's been so much focus on the D. We'll talk about that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. I love Thanksgiving. I love just the absolute decadence that comes with Thanksgiving, basically just being encouraged to eat whatever I want at this one meal. But you have to make sure that you offset that decadence with some degree of responsibility, in particular, something that is not pure calories or sugar. And that's where Built Bars come in. They are the new holiday dessert. Just you feast on something that tastes good, but you feel good about it. For example, slice of pie on average, 300 calories before you even add any of the fixing on
It's
top
a
of it.
very small pie slice, by the way. Nobody eats a 300-calorie slice of pie. But anyway, go on, Built Bar.
I'm just telling you what's
I
in
know.
front of me.
I know. I'm just saying the Built Bar people are being kind, even just limiting that to 300 calories.
I have no idea what science the good folks at Built Bar used to come up with this, but I assume that it is responsible and credible. But most Built Bars, though, this they know for sure because this is their business. Only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, covered in 100% chocolate. They're a great option if you're feeling hungry, and you can share them at your family gatherings. It makes them less awkward than all the other stuff at Thanksgiving that is often incredibly awkward. And also, Built Bar Black Friday coming up. Mark your calendar. It's going to be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at built.com.
All right, so I'll throw these numbers back up. Again, reminding people, we talk so much, Andy, about the impact of Anthony Davis and where he shoots and how that goes when there's a traditional center on the floor. And, as Tim lays out here, AD definitely takes more shots away from the rim when Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan are on the floor. I don't think that's necessarily a massive surprise. We've said it before too. Some of that is related to AD, but some of it's just where people are. And all of that is really important. But the other thing is, as the Lakers figure out how to make the offense work as well as it possibly can, the impacts of Russell Westbrook and where he gets his shots are huge, because as much as people don't want Davis shooting from the mid-range, what you really don't want is Russell Westbrook taking 5 or 6 3-pointers a game, because there's no way for him to get to the basket. Again, 52% of Russ's shots at the rim when Dwight and DeAndre are sitting, 34 when DeAndre's on the court with him, 25% when Dwight is on the floor. That is untenable for an offense that people may not realize has completely tanked over the last couple of weeks. While the defense is moving into the upper third, the Lakers will start play on Friday. When do they play again? Friday night. They'll start play with the 21st best offense in the league. They've dropped that far in terms of the efficiency, and some of that's not having LeBron, but some of it's just like the offense isn't always operating as it should. Like, they need to figure out how to optimize that.
Yeah, I mean, I some of this I'm taking with a grain of salt, to be totally honest, just because you mentioned that they have not had LeBron the last, I think it's 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to take into account that you had a Portland game that was, for all intents and purposes, without Anthony Davis. You've had a game against Charlotte.
And effort.
Right. And effort, interest, engagement, give a shit, all of that. You had a game against Charlotte that was without Rajon Rondo for all of 12 minutes because of that ejection, which is a very big deal when you don't have LeBron on top of it, plus all the other injuries.
It hasn't been good. There are mitigating circumstances. I agree, but it hasn't been good.
How much you care about how good it's been, how good it hasn't been, or what you think it means, I think you have to at least look at it through that context. Like that context cannot be ignored, because I think the timing explains a lot. I mean, there were issues with this team regardless. I mean, we have not seen a full strength version of this team yet, but we knew that there would be stuff to figure out even with this team at full strength. So I'm not trying to discount the idea that there's stuff to figure out, or that the numbers don't reflect some of these issues to iron out. I'm just saying the fact that it's trended in this direction doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Okay, that may be, but my bigger point is here that we've spent a lot of time focused on the defense, and I think if you asked most Lakers fans where are they ranked in defensive efficiency in the league, 12 would not be the answer people would come up with. I think most people would say it's much worse than that. I also think the inverse is probably true perception-wise with this team, is that the offense has been pretty good and the defense has been awful. And for the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games of the season, that was true. And that has started to shift. And the larger point is the Lakers have to optimize what's happening offensively and with the bigs. Not as it's turning out, it is not simply a matter of Anthony Davis and what's best for AD. You really do have to keep an eye on optimizing Westbrook, not so that Russ becomes the star of the team or that the offense is, built around Westbrook succeeding, but so that Westbrook isn't a hindrance on what you're trying to do. I think ultimately what's best for AD with, playing at center happens to be what's best for Russ, which happens to be what's best for the team.
Look,
But all of this stuff factors into the same pool. And at a time, particularly when the offense is struggling.
yeah, I mean, and even Frank Vogel, as much as I think he is naturally inclined, I've talked about this a lot, towards just a too big set. He really values the pressure that it puts on the rim. Beyond any lane protection and stuff like that, I think it fits into his offensive philosophy. Even he seems to be coming around to that reality in terms of just the overall picture. But at least for right now, and this is something Cran just pointed out, the other end of this is defense, with Russ and AD on the court, and AD at center, 113.2 defensive rating, with Dwight at center, 112.8. As he pointed out, small sample size. DeAndre at center, 109.4. And for those who are not aware, defensive rating, the lower, the
Lower
better.
is better.
So therein lies some of the rub with
Right.
this,
And so
in
you're
terms
right.
of how to find that balance.
How much do you give up? And, it is, that's where I guess you hope that all of these things, like you say, when everybody's back, you find those best combinations. But man, it is tricky because you don't have KCP or Kuz or Caruso or guys like that who are very predictable, don't necessarily hurt your offense, in some ways contribute to it. There were far fewer either or propositions on the team last year. And the Lakers are sort of hoping that some of that from last year bleeds into this year, where 2 or 3 of these guys, whether it's THT, Bazemore, Monk, maybe Kendrick Nunn, where they don't have to make those trade-offs as aggressively as it looks like they might have to. That's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, look, once everything is back to full strength, and knock on wood, that day will eventually arrive, then I think you can really start evaluating whether or not Frank Vogel is making the right decisions, if he's willing to display the flexibility that he himself has acknowledged that he has to do. And there's been a lot of tacit acknowledgments over the last few weeks from Vogel of like, look, this ain't the roster I would have built. And to some degree, I think this reflects Vogel's own shortcomings offensively that we've talked about before. He has needed some help. That being said, though, there has been a massive defensive trade-off. Although, if you're looking for a silver lining in all this, Brian, the last 4 or 5 games, I think, have also been indicative of what can happen even when your defensive personnel is not ideal, with guys really investing more, trying to pay more attention to the details, just really looking to play on the same page as much as possible. All of this stuff can be very fluid at this stage of the season because it's so small sample size theater that the numbers can swing pretty wildly.
Oh yeah, no. Look, the Lakers,
but over 12 games
were 10th.
Right, but over 12 games, for example, Carmelo Anthony has improved defensively.
Yes,
like he has from the beginning of this season to where he is now. He has been doing things better in terms of the system. So I mean,
it can and will change. I absolutely agree. But it's an interesting trend to see that this this question of the center isn't just about AD. It needs to expand outward. We'll get to the Melo thing early next week because we want to give it enough time. But we always encourage people to leave comments on the iTunes page, the Locked On Lakers iTunes page. Shout out to my friend Greg Holman, who left a note. I meant to do this weeks ago. Left a note on our page. Used to play Little League with this guy.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I apologize for not saying, I hope he's listening to this show, but like reconnecting through this. I haven't seen the guy probably in 35 years, but thanks so much for leaving that comment, Greg Holman, my guy from the Red Raiders.
How about this? Rare advertising callback, I bet you guys went to McDonald's after a Little League game at
Probably.
some point during the
Probably.
Red Raiders
We were good
reign.
too.
Were
I
you?
remember Greg was very tall. I don't know if he turned out that way, but when we were little, he was. All right, but this from GA boy in Tennessee, Georgia boy in Tennessee. This was left in October. If the Cam brothers just talked about basketball, this would be the best Lakers podcast, hands down. But the reason I stopped listening, so Georgia boy in Tennessee will not hear this. The reason I stopped listening to the last host is the big reason I'm going to end up not listening to them. Unnecessary cursing and the wannabe comedic statements. It's getting old. I'm okay to listen to you guys just talk about basketball without a joke. Get right, Kamenetsky brothers. You guys can do better. First of all, there's nothing unnecessary about our cursing. They're all necessary. And I think we're funny.
Well, how about this? And I'll put it in terms that Georgia boy would probably like. Bleep off.
I just think our jokes are funny. I do.
I think mine are.
Yeah, well, but that's a lot of jokes. You tell a lot of jokes. So
Sure.
between the two of us. All right. Anyway, we will see everybody Monday. Some big games coming up over the weekend. And next week, the return of Alex Caruso to Staples Center.
Shouldn't be controversial in the slightest.
Not in the slightest. We'll have, that'll certainly be one of the topics we get into on Monday's show. We'll have a great weekend, everybody.